Okay, Riley. Thank you so much for being in this live talk. There's a lot of our students that wanted to be part of and listen to you. And just to start, like, can you give us a brief intro of what got you to be the director of NACE? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy, how long do we have? I'll try to keep it brief. I'll just give a brief insight over kind of my background in esports. So I'm going into year 13 here, and spent a lot of my initial time in esports as a player. Call of Duty is my roots. So I was a COD kid at heart, especially back in the glory days of COD. So Black Ops 2, Call of Duty Ghost. Spent a couple years trying to become a pro in that game, and eventually transitioned into team management. I've got a younger brother that was a Counter-Strike player, and got to see him in his journey of becoming one of the youngest players to qualify as a pro in North America, and learned a lot about like the business side of esports, and really wanted to apply that knowledge after I graduated with my undergrad. So I worked as an engineer for about 5 years as my 9 to 5, and then built a brand from the ground up, which is Armada Esports, Armada GG on Twitter if people are curious to doing some research. But really just got the opportunity to build a brand and field teams at just about every popular esports title, and learn a lot about those communities, learn a lot about the salary demands, learn a lot about the importance of content creation and building a content creation vertical. And then stumbled upon this wonderful world of Collegiate, as somebody that's been a traditional sports fan my entire life. And it was just the marriage of my two greatest passions. So got involved in Collegiate since 2019, and the rest has been history. I've had the opportunity to lead 3 different NACE member programs around the country, from small private school to a larger public school. And it's just been really cool being at different institutions and seeing how esports is viewed, and being under different departments within different institutions. And like I said, I've been involved in NACE ever since I got involved in Collegiate, just on volunteering for different leadership groups, and served on power rankings committees, served on seating committees, served on our eligibility enforcement committee. Then this past year was elected to the board of directors. And then a couple months in, I stepped into the interim executive director role, spent 8 months in that role, and then was given the opportunity to step into this permanent role a couple months ago. And I stepped away from my previous job at Grand Valley. So it's been a whirlwind to get here. But just, grateful for the opportunity to have a greater impact on our space.
Amazing. And in those 3 programs that you managed, like, what was your main focus, or what was your approach, or did it differ based on the university administration and their goals? Like,
yeah, it absolutely differed. It has to differ, right? I think especially when you look at esports across the country right now, it's so diverse in terms of where you're housed on campus, and your department and your institution may have very different goals depending on the school that you're talking about, right? So when I worked at a small private school, it's very enrollment driven, right? I was under athletics. That is the athletics model. There were like 30 other athletic programs on campus, and it's all about driving enrollment and recruitment, right? So certainly that was the focus of my program at Aquinas. But then with the opportunity to work at Michigan Tech, which is a Division I hockey school, and then also at Grand Valley, which is a Division II large size public school, the value proposition is very different, and the goals are different. And specifically at Grand Valley, my last stop, it was really based in recreation. We were based in recreation and wellness. So the starting point for our program was focused on that community on campus, which was really powerful because we had a space where we could serve 500 kids a year. We had a club program, we had an intramural program. And then when we launched our varsity program, we had that foundation that continued to support our varsity program and show up and created incentive for people to get better and try to make it on the varsity program someday. So certainly it is institutionally dependent. And that's always my recommendation when someone's starting a new school, is start with figuring out what your institution's mission and goals are, figure out what your department and divisional goals are, find a way from day one to connect how you're building your program to those goals.
Amazing. And what would you say is a day-to-day now as the director of NACE?
Oh man. Well, as a couple months into this new role, really it's been a lot of learning for myself first and foremost, and just listening to our great home office staff, some members that have been around a lot longer than I have, and just learning more about the history of NACE, and then on the flip side, once again, just making sure I'm there supporting my team, make sure I'm there supporting our leadership groups that do a ton of work for us. I'm in basically every leadership group meeting on a week-to-week basis, making sure that our home office team is giving them the tools that they need to be successful and continue moving forward on the initiatives that they're working on. So day-to-day right now is a lot of working with leadership group members, a lot of one-on-one conversations with either leadership group representatives or just general membership. This is also recruitment and retention season for us. So having a lot of conversations about renewals and gathering feedback on how can we do better moving forward, provide more value within membership. And then certainly whenever there's a leadership change at an association like this, there's a lot of industry partners that are reaching out that I'm connecting with on a day-to-day basis as well. So, and then certainly the other big piece of this is the planning for our national convention, which we're less than a month out on. So really juggling a lot of those pieces, and day-to-day right now is basically me being in meetings from 9 to 5.
Okay. And I also saw like in your NACE bio that one of the main focuses of you is like structuring like a strong eligibility criteria. How do you work on that?
Yeah, this is how we've really positioned ourselves at NACE, right? We launched in 2016, and from day one, our core focus is on varsity level play, right? And building a varsity level ecosystem that is focused on standards and structure, right? So the work that we do around standards and structure, first and foremost, we have some requirements that we expect of institutions to be able to join the association, right? These are things like having a staff member on campus that's designated to supporting your esports program. These are things like you have to have an on-campus facility to be a NACE member, first and foremost. And then we have what's called an in-house play bylaw, which is within our constitution and bylaws that enforces what standards look like for playing in competition. Specifically, that in-house play bylaw, it's called in-house because we require all NACE varsity play to happen in person. So that has been our mission since day one, is to focus on in-person play, because we think that in-person play really reinforces those positive student outcomes and also continues to reinforce integrity in the league and integrity in competition. When you know the other team that you're playing against not only meets these varsity standards, but they're playing in person, right? And then you mentioned eligibility. The other piece of this, certainly we require full-time status and good standing. And we've built an eligibility center on our website that allows members to work within their member portals to upload their rosters and then upload eligibility documentation. And then we have our home office team that works with our eligibility enforcement committee to verify and enforce eligibility. So at the end goal, the goal is the team you're playing that evening in Rocket League is in person out of their facility, has a campus official overseeing their competition, and that you know that they're the students that they say that they are, but then also that they're full-time students in good standing progressing towards graduation.
Amazing. And there's another point also, Areso, is that you want to make Collegiate Esports generational. How can you make that with all the video games popping in and then some like leaving, new ones coming in? Like, how do you plan on doing that?
Yeah, I mean, like it does start with our core mission, and we think that we have a responsibility to tell the story of why you should be supporting esports at a varsity level, which is why we're very focused on varsity play, because we believe that although gaming can be an excellent tool for social connection on campus, that supporting esports at a highly competitive level creates infinitely more positive outcomes for your students and can really help actually develop your students into their future careers, or potentially, if they're good enough, into a potential pro career that sets themselves up for long-term pro success, right? So we believe that at our foundation, the work that we do with our members to empower our members to vote and elect representatives on our leadership groups, to drive change when it comes to legislative power, and then all of the work that we do around our standards positions this really strong foundation of a league with high competitive integrity that can allow us then to tell that story to university administrators and create that confidence in university administrators that they know that this is a league that is going to have staying power. There are strong standards. And if we're going to field teams in NACE, that the system has set itself up so that we know our players will develop because of it. And we can achieve those outcomes that we want out of our program that, once again, connect to the institutional goals.
Okay. And one thing on that, like, how do you ensure like decision making is like efficient? Because like with all the seats that you have, like, how's it a decision-making process in
Yeah.
NACE?
Yeah, certainly it takes some time and effort, right? It does. And but we holistically believe in the importance of member empowerment and empowering that member voice. So we're happy to do the work, right? We're happy to take the time to work with our members, because ultimately these are paying members that have been elected by the rest of membership to represent our members, and their voice means a lot to us. So certainly it presents its challenges. I would say generally, like, we're the group that's going to be one of the more the less agile groups in the space, because we want to make sure that if we make a decision, it's something that is endorsed by our membership and our community. And we do that through bringing new ideas and having these discussions with our leadership groups to make sure if we're going to do something, we're going to do it right, and it's going to be actually impactful for our industry rather than throwing darts at a dartboard.
Okay. I'm gonna pause for a second, and there's a member of the audience asking a question. So
Sure.
I'm gonna read it to you, because I also like, the audience to be engaged. So, like, from Damaso X, from the social impact that these programs generate, how do you think the inclusion of esports programs in universities is transforming the perception of personal development and the development of professional skills?
Yeah, I think it's doing so much to do that. I mean, that's, once again, it goes back to that gaming, once again, can be a great social activity on campus, but in many times it will just stop there as a social activity. And there's plenty of other social activities that will be available on your campus, right? I think that the key word is transformative. Esports can actually be transformative, especially if you put some infrastructure and standards around it to make sure that that is a positive environment, an environment, a strong culture that's focused on personal and professional development. So you're touching on some of those key skills that we holistically believe in are the positive outcomes that varsity level play generates.
And talking about standards, like, what are academic standards? Like, how do you ensure that students, are engaged also academically?
Yeah, it's through our eligibility center. So we have two documents. We have our intent to compete document, which is a document that every student needs to sign once a year. And it provides a couple different protections. One, it provides poaching protection for the institution. So it's a way for you to sign a player for the upcoming year, and another NACE member isn't able to then poach them mid-season. Here's a process in place where we have to release that student to go seek other opportunities. So that really promotes that loyalty and that connection with that institution, and provides the opportunity to promote positive retention. But the ITC also protects the student in the way where, if you sign to that institution, the language in there outlines that whatever you have been offered, that institution is required to give you that thing, right? So there's kind of a two-way protection there when it comes to our intent to compete document. And then we have our eligibility certificate, which is going to be your typical registrar form. So this is a form that once a semester, every team you have in NACE Varsity Play, and every player and student needs to be represented on that form. And then you submit that to either your athletic compliance officer, if you're under athletics, or your university registrar. And they have to go certify and sign off that all of these students meet full-time requirement and are in good academic standing.
Amazing. Very similar to, like, the traditional athletics. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Correct.
And not so traditional like athletics is the publishers. Like, what's your relationship with the publishers?
We've always tried to position ourselves to have good relationships with the publishers and make sure we're operating within either a current license agreement or a community license agreement. So we have a great relationship, and all I'll say is there's going to be some news coming up at our convention this year that will have to do with the publisher that we're going to be working with moving forward.
Okay. And talking about games and publishers, what is, like, a game that is growing quite a lot in NACE? Like, what is a popular game?
Yeah. If you're talking about newer games, I would say obviously Rivals is a newer game. Marvel Rivals. It's no surprise. It kind of took the world by storm a bit, and we're seeing some level of staying power with the game too, and a lot of interest certainly at the K-12 level and at the collegiate level. So that's a title that we're actively monitoring and understanding what is our strategy going to be around this. Ultimately, when we talk about game titles at NACE, we currently support 6 core game titles, and it's going to be the six titles that you expect, some of the more popular collegiate titles. And we're intentional about that because when our perspective on this is that when we are deciding to support a title at a varsity level, then we're telling our institutions that you should invest into at least 4 years of infrastructure, coaching, scholarships into supporting that title, right? And what we don't want to do is adopt a title in which it has the potential or a high potential to potentially die off in a year or so. And there's a bunch of investment that was put into students or infrastructure that may now either go to waste or neither party wins in that case. The student loses because their opportunity is now gone, and then the program has invested something into a product that hasn't worked well for them. So we take that decision very seriously, which is why, once again, generally we're not going to be the first to the table to offer competition in a new title. However, we are still recognizing that we have a lot of members interested in this title and a lot of students interested in the title. So we are trying to think strategically, how do we develop a program that we can offer new and emerging titles like this to at least offer some level of play for our members that may not be varsity level play, but still an opportunity for their students to connect with that game.
Okay. And do you have any way to maybe I'm phrasing this wrong, but what would happen if, for example, a student, I mean, for titles you have, it's very complicated, but what would happen if a student, if we were a game title and that student, got a scholarship and he has 2 years left in his bachelor degree and the competition disappeared? What would happen to a student? The university would keep his scholarship or her scholarship, or yeah.
Yeah, I think a couple things that can happen. One common thing that happens is that student talks with that program director and finds an opportunity to shift into a different title, right? There may be, obviously we've got a lot of players that play multiple titles, and there's some transferable skills between some titles, right? A lot more transferable than in traditional sports, right? So in many cases that happens is, hey, if we need a spot on the JV team here, or hey, you're really good at this, I think you could push for a spot on varsity in this title, and stay on scholarship, right? But I think even in other cases where universities have made the unfortunate decision to cut a specific title, generally programs have done a really good job of honoring that student's scholarship and honoring it, whether it's 1 year left, 2 years left, you name it. So I think fortunately, in that specific scenario, students have a lot of options, and every option almost results in them being able to retain their scholarship.
Yeah. I mean, I know the amazing work and that happens. It was just this question because a lot of students and parents ask this, so just to reassure them, that's that's why I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
We have another question from Damaso. Do you think publishers should get more actively involved in these types of programs? If so, what actions could they take, or is their current level of involvement already optimal in the university ecosystem? I guess they could always do more, or what's your point on that?
Yeah. I think what this goes back to at a high level, I can't talk too deeply about specific publisher relationships, but at a very high level, one of the primary reasons I'm so bullish on the future of Collegiate is, and I could talk about this for hours. So if you want to see some in-depth coverage, I have a tweet pinned on my Twitter account that goes really detailed on this. But this idea behind the structure of the traditional tier 2 model and the structure of the collegiate model. And I believe that the best future is with collegiate becoming a primary path to pro. It doesn't have to be the only path to pro. Certainly, esports is a global sport, and there's some countries that don't have the infrastructure and ability to have a strong collegiate system that become a path to pro for them. But I truly believe that that collegiate should become a primary path to pro. The reason I believe that is it breaks down into the incentive model of a tier 2 team versus the incentives a college has of fielding a collegiate esports team at a high level, right? As somebody that built and ran a tier 2 team myself for 5 years, I can tell you that there's not a lot of money out there to be had, and that the business case really doesn't work. So because of that, unfortunately, a lot of young people are having to make the decision, if they want to pursue tier 2, to put off going to college. And in maybe a best case scenario, you sign with an Oregon, you're getting $500 a month and a couple keyboards. Well, that's not going to pay the bills, right? That's not going to let you go get your own apartment and go live on your own. And that whole time you're potentially foregoing education, right? Where and then also that tier 2 org may close 3 months later, and now you're left without an organization. So I think the tier 2 model is still lacking a lot of that sustainability of really developing people into a professional. And I think that's where Collegiate can come in. Not only on the business model side, that our collegiate programs have many more ways that they can create value for their institutions outside of just competitive success and just making it to pro. So a pro team buys you out, which is the main model in tier 2, right? So because of the diverse ways programs can provide value on campus, and you combine that with all of the infrastructure and the development that's put around students in collegiate programs, I believe not only is it a better incentive model for the colleges compared to a tier 2 org, but also all of the systems that are put around these collegiate students are developing them infinitely quicker into a holistic competitor that could prepare them for a professional opportunity versus the challenge that the infrastructure of the tier 2 scene presents itself, where I think there's some gaps in players' overall holistic development outside of just looking at how good are you as a player, but how good are you as a teammate, how good is your communication skills. So I say all that to say that back to your original question about publishers is that I believe at some point there will have to be a recognition of that incentive structure and that business model. And it's kind of already happening when we're seeing collegiate teams taking over tier 2 in some specific titles, because that culture is working. And regardless, it's not necessarily that all these collegiate teams are getting these high level prospects that could be pro next year. There's a wide range of players that are coming to these top collegiate programs, and they're developing, they're getting better no matter what age that they are. And they're getting professional opportunities. So I think we're already seeing that, the early days of success and the reason why that model works. And I think at some point there has to be a recognition from publishers that this is the way forward. At least this is the most sustainable way forward to develop that really strong pipeline for professional talent, to make sure when you get that opportunity that you're prepared.
Okay, amazing. And also, like, we work not only with this kind of students, but students that want to transition, like now use their skill as a tool to finance their studies and get their master's or bachelor's degree. So it's wanting to go pro or like transitioning to pro. But like most of the students are gamers that just want to engage in the university campus. But yeah, I totally get it. And another thing that I saw a lot on social media, and everyone's posting about it: awards, NACE Awards. Why do you do awards?
Yeah.
What's the reason behind it?
Yeah, we do awards as a celebration of varsity level esports, and it's the recognition of all the work that either leadership members put into helping further our mission, or all the work that our programs go into. With like, let's be real, when it comes to the standards that we put around our competition and the eligibility requirements that we have, it does create a lot of work on our programs, right? So there's a lot of extra lift that it takes for a NACE program to compete in our competition. And so it really is a celebration, but also a recognition of all the effort that it took to do that in a time where there's still a lot of programs that don't have the resources and coaching needs and the administration resources to be considered fully staffed. So we understand it's a workload that is given over to our programs. So NACE Awards is just one of the ways that we can go out and celebrate and recognize the effort. And we do that through our association awards, which you're seeing everything on social media about right now. This year, we made the decision to take our competition awards and award them at our grand finals event in person. So basically in the pregame before our national championship games happened, we brought the winners of our competition awards up on the casting desk. And that was a great success, a good opportunity to shine a spotlight on them in a competition event. So we're excited for the convention this year, where our award show is going to be focused on the association related awards around leaders and programs and advocates and support staff in our space.
For your convention, is there going to be like an online possibility, or it's 100% in person?
No, it's 100% in person. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
I remember when it was online. Well, I have to go in person then next year.
yeah. It's a great experience. And the convention also is a celebration of our space and a celebration of our programs. But we also do a lot of NACE business there. It's a main way that we connect and communicate new things and source feedback from our members. But it's also a way that we do business. That's where all of our leadership elections happen. And that's where legislative proposals happen. So any member can go get 9 other members to sign a proposal, and it will be officially on the table for our legislative meeting at the convention, right? So it's a really powerful way that we can have members bring up new ideas and fundamental changes to the association that the entire membership can discuss and vote on. So we also combine that with a lot of cool educational sessions and professional development opportunities.
Okay, amazing. Also, there's like, I don't know if you guys do it, but like esports, STEM, tech companies, do you also partner with tech companies to build that pipeline, or is it more on a university basis? How does that work?
Yeah, currently a lot of the work that we do with partners is on a university basis, right? It is connecting identifying a need that our programs may have, and connecting them with partners that we feel have maybe developed a really robust solution to solve that need, right? Now, we have been discussing better ways we can create pipelines for student development and student internship opportunities. So certainly that's something that we're considering, that we feel that we want to not only as a better way to promote student development within the association and provide students some more leadership opportunities. But as you mentioned, our space is highly dominated by STEM students. And a lot of the partners we work with are partners that hire these types of students. So there's an obvious potential connection there too, but currently our main focus has been on the university connections.
Okay. Righty. Based on your personal opinion, where do you see Collegiate Esports in the next 3 years? Not 5, 3.
3. Wow. Man, that's a loaded question. It really is. And I would say it's some of the things that make that challenging right now is we are at a bit of a crossroads in our space. There's a lot of changes happening within the industry. There's a lot of external influences just within higher education in general that has created a bit more uncertainty around just higher education. And obviously we're talking specifically about esports and higher education, but certainly those influences have an impact on programs right now and will continue to have an impact in the future until there's some more certainty around that. But all that aside, in terms of where I would love to see the space be in 3 years is clarity, right? And what I mean by clarity is right now, if I am somebody trying to learn about college esports, or I am a prospective fan of college esports, it's very challenging to figure out either how do I get engaged, how do I find information that tells me what this industry looks like, and what is varsity level play, what is club level play, what is their junior varsity component, right? All of the things that traditional sports have done well at, which is making it very clear what types of competition there are. I think we still have a lot of confusion and uncertainty in our space when you think about new stakeholders that are trying to learn about college esports. So what I would love to see in 3 years is an ecosystem that has more clarity, that has more structure, and an ecosystem where more parties and groups can come together and agree on more standards to provide more clarity for the space. And now that's very high level. In reality, that results in a lot of different things, but that's what I would love to see over the next couple of years, is making sure we're keeping in mind of the people that aren't endemic to our space, because we need those types of people to get involved in our space or pay attention to our space or become fans of our space if we expect us to grow outside of the bounds that we currently sit in.
Okay. And like, amazing explanation. And also, like, is your focus also on increasing the viewership? Because like people interested in seeing, eyeballs, in the matches can also get more attention, more brands getting, more brands paying more. So
yeah, I think what you're touching on is the word fandom, right? And this is at a high level. Obviously, viewership is one potential outcome of building fandom, but I think this is something that even the professional scene is still trying to figure out. A lot of the professional leagues, and some have solved some pieces of it, some have not. So certainly it's a challenge for us. If the professional scene is having an issue with this, which is the highest level of play in the most amount of investment, then certainly collegiate is going to have a challenge when it comes to building fandom. But I think it's critical. I think it really is critical, especially when we think of where we're positioned, which is varsity level play. We're building. Institutions are making significant investments into building these programs, and a lot of the programs that we have the pleasure to work with are some of the best teams in the country, and a lot of them have students that have really large followings. They may have been a content creator or a tier 2 player. Some cases they were an ex-professional player. So we have a lot of cool storylines and a lot of extremely powerful and impressive teams that we could help try to elevate and build fandom around. So this is a key area that we will be focused on at NACE moving forward. Like I said, nobody's really figured it out yet. It's a challenge, but we just want to start with finding ways that we can give prospective fans a way to at least easily access results in competition so that they can connect with our teams, right? I'm somebody that's a big sports fan. Every day, every morning, one of the first things I do is go check on, like right now it's the Detroit Tigers, a baseball team. I go check on what was the game score yesterday. What are the updated stats? Did the pitcher have a good game, right? We need to have a starting point to allow prospective fans to connect with teams or connect with specific student athletes. So that's going to be our starting point in terms of how we focus on building fandom. And then certainly what we would hope that if you build a strong foundation of fandom, that results into viewers being invested in your competition all the way until its biggest moment, which is your championship game, which is where currently we focus our streaming resources on.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I mean, highlights, like collegiate programs should make more emphasis in highlights, because like esports or sports, what I watch is the highlights. I never watch the full games. So yeah. And do you guide programs in content creation? Because like now there's a lot of programs like I'm putting a lot of emphasis in content creation, and I'm monetizing on that, or at least giving the program like a more professional image. So like, how are you gonna tackle this? Because like we've worked with some content creations. Like now universities are also giving scholarships for content creators to like potentially talk about the program and to attract more students to the program. So how do you see that evolving?
Yeah, I think there's two pieces of content creation. There is helping support opportunities for up and coming creators or student creators, which is an area we're trying to figure out our strategy in. We certainly have a lot of our programs that have invested a significant amount of scholarship money into either staffing roles or content creation roles or broadcast roles. And a lot of that has really helped build that stronger foundation for their program and allow them to effectively celebrate the successes better through content initiatives, right? But when we think about content creation, I think this is also kind of in line with talking about the word fandom, because one of the things that the professional scene has figured out is the power of co-streaming, right? A lot of these professional leagues have tapped into some of these creators that want to tune in, and that their viewers want to tune in to watching this specific event, but they want to watch it on Tarek's channel or watch it on this big streamer's channel. So I think there's a world in which we can help serve potentially both of those communities, not only tap into the traditional content creation community, but some upcoming creators through finding ways to enable co-streaming for some of our events in the future. So certainly it's a critical way that programs are able to kind of celebrate some of their successes and tell some of their own stories. And like I said, that's a little bit of a look into what our strategy will look like in the long term.
Okay. Yeah. Because I'm also like, from what I see, maybe they take the professional esport team approach, of like also including content creators, to talk about their teams, and so it's like esport players and content creators. I think something there can be super amazing. But yeah. Okay. Riley, before we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to mention that I didn't talk about? And
no, did you have a question from the audience?
Brendan on LinkedIn from NDCOT College is
big fan of Brendan.
2 thumbs up on co-streaming. Okay. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Brendan.
But Is there anything that you would like to touch on?
Yeah, not necessarily. I think we covered, at a high level what NACE is and really what we're going to be focused on moving forward. I guess the one thing I would like to just close with is I touched on it briefly about the importance of integrating your esports program and your esports program's goals with your institution and your institutional outcomes, right? And that is really, really critical, especially in a time where there is some uncertainty in higher education. There are some external influences. My recommendation for folks, and we're working on a lot of work at NACE to provide some more tools for our members to do program assessment and think about these things and collect more data to tell that story of why esports is important, especially varsity esports on their campus. But my recommendation is whether you're a new program or whether your program has been around for 5 years, know what your department or divisional or even institutional strategic plan looks like and know what those outcomes are. And you may already be building your program in a way that is in line with those outcomes your institution is trying to create for your students. But even if you already have the alignment, just make sure you're collecting data and you're collecting that in a robust way. And we'll have a session at our convention this year that helps train people on how to do this. And this is a association-wide initiative that will have more tools for all members to do this and collect and share data. But that is really critical right now to make sure that we are building our program sustainably, because what we're realizing is that there's in a couple cases where there is misalignment between how the program is built and what the institutional strategy is. Whenever there's times of uncertainty and times of external influence, that is when misalignment gets highlighted, and that's what's resulting in some potentially negative things in our space. So that's my closing point today. That is really important, especially now. Is just take a step back, no matter how long you've been in the space, and just make sure you know what your institution's goals are and understand how you can align your program with those goals or make sure you collect data to tell that story.
Yeah. From a personal opinion, why would an institution say, okay, I'm investing this amount on esports program, and then there's this misalignment because there hasn't been, previously, so why would why do universities invest in these programs with having all the data or the right reasons behind it?
Yeah, it goes back to the importance of the difference between competition and casual gaming, right? It's tied to those outcomes, which are very commonly seen in institutional goals, right? It's about this holistic development approach. It's about career development, personal development. And our belief is that varsity level play and the standards and structures we put around that promotes a very positive environment that creates those outcomes. And that just by investing in a recreational program, although can create its own outcomes, we believe that this is a much more transformative way to achieve those outcomes tenfold, and really take a program that, at least at its core, is taking people in and developing people into a better human being, a better professional, and a better person by the time that they leave that program. And like I said, we're going to be working on our program assessment strategy to actually collect some data that our programs work on assessing on a year-to-year basis, so that we can create some benchmarks and tell that story through data of specifically what are the average rates of, let's say, retention on your campus, and what is the average NACE member program retention rate, right? So we're going to work on benchmarking some of that data to equip our members with some more tools to tell that story. But like I said, at its core, it's all about personal development, career development, professional development, really that holistic approach, which is what a lot of institutions have outlined in their institutional goals.
Yeah. That's amazing that you're going to teach them how to quantify those outcomes, because then, when the numbers are there, the numbers don't lie.
Absolutely.
So, amazing, Riley. Riley, thank you so much for your time, and hope to see you in the near future.